What's up, guys? Welcome back to Structure. I'm H. This is E.
What up?
And
What
this
up?
is our second video in our new series that we're doing where we're reviewing and reacting to documentaries. And today we're talking about We Need to Talk About Cosby.
Yes.
This is a documentary that's on Showtime. We just watched it. We're just going to go off the top.
Yeah, I mean, Cosby was America's dad. He was my TV dad. Watching this was very difficult, to be honest with you. I'm just going to put it out there. Uh, H, let's get unstructured.
Let's go. And guys, as always, don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. So we just watched. We need to talk about Cosby. This is a documentary that just recently came out in Showtime a
Yeah.
couple of weeks ago, and this basically just looks at the situation with Cosby
Yeah.
in from the beginning to end to where we see, well, not end, but it's not dead, but until
End of his
the
career.
resolution. So who knows? You never know in this
Yeah,
country.
hopefully.
And there's so much like because you know I didn't follow the trial as close and the situation that was going on because everything it was
I
a
don't
lot of
think
stuff happening
it
at the
was.
time.
It was really, really messy, and I think a lot of people chose their side, and you just waited for the verdict. You didn't watch the trial as much unless you were more invested in it. This documentary shows us a lot of things that I didn't know,
Yeah,
and
the
it's
level.
disturbing. It is disturbing.
Yeah, the level that this man because let's think about it. Cosby, and I'm not immigrant for or those of you who don't know. And when I came to this country, I had watched the Cosby Show before. Um, I was very very young, so it's something that I could like really understand that well.
Yeah,
But we know you knew Fat Albert, you knew everything that this man's done and what he represented in the country in the community,
yeah.
and the level of disappointment that this brought to people and how polarizing he became as a figure. You have some people that took his side, some other people that were against him, and
Absolutely.
then you have all these conspiracies being built up that this is all just a plan by the man to take him down, which sounds crazy.
Just look at the documentary. Look at the facts. It's very disturbing. It's very enlightening. It's very. I think the right word to put it and to use is conflicting because, like, for a guy that's done so much in our eyes, has done so much in other people's eyes, and it's not necessarily good. It's just
Disappointing.
disappointing. It's very
Very
disappointing.
disappointing.
Yeah.
Now, I'll say this: I really enjoyed the first. Is this show is divided by 4 episodes. So the first episode, we see his rise to fame. He was a
Yeah,
bartender.
let's get into that because just real quick because I didn't know it. I'm a Cosby kid or a Huxtable kid, and so I knew that I knew about Fat Albert. I didn't know about much of the stuff that came on before that. So he started in 1962, and he quickly rose to fame because he chose to be a raceless comedian as opposed to being a black comedian,
Yeah.
and so he got streamlined, which was good for him, and that landed him the role in I Spy, which a lot of people I heard people talk about it, but I didn't know how hard I Spy hit during that time. You think of like during
James
that.
Bond. You think of
Yeah, he
iconic.
was on that level of James Bond, but as a black guy, at the same time that you saw people with the step and fetching and all these other things, these unreal black stereotypes of black people being morons and all this other stuff that was going on at the same time that Cosby played a college educated, sophisticated, and he was a Rhodes Scholar action hero with style on I Spy. So he was the black people's champ during that time. I mean, people tuned in to watch him, and that's sort of where his persona I think grew from, and that's what it was vested in
And
at
not
that
just
time.
black. I'll say this: not just black people. This everyone, black, white, you name it. They live in this
Absolutely.
country. Really fell in love with his personality, his character, and everything he was bringing. Because at the time he was different. I guess his comedy style. I never like really. I personally had never, I have to be honest, never listened to a comedy album from him.
Me either.
I only seen the
The comedy specials.
comedy the shows that he's done, But this person is iconic. I know some of the comics that I think it was Seinfeld described as
He was
to him he's the best comic ever,
absolutely.
which
That's who he looked. That's who
that's a
Seinfeld looked
huge
up to. Yeah, this is a huge honor. That's who Seinfeld looked up to when he started in comedy. And honestly, they say that because in the '80s, when everybody was getting comedy specials, Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, and they were HBO was giving out money and all that. Cosby called him up and said, "Hey, let me do me." And he sat down in a chair for an hour and had the whole place rolling. And I mean, that just showed his comedic genius. So he was skilled. He was
very
good.
talented. So
Exactly.
he's once in a lifetime kind of person, right? But then he had to muddy it all up. It's just terrible.
Yeah. Allegedly. But from what we see, it got bad and it followed him everywhere that he went throughout his career. I mean, if you look at it from what the victims claim, it started. The first one that we know of is 1965, then another one in 1966, then another one in 1967, and six in 1969. And it just goes
Good
on
point,
from
Kyle.
there.
It's
There was, I
crazy.
think they said it was 63 or 68 women that came forward that alleged that he raped them or
Plus, how many more
assaulted
did
them.
not come forward? Because you gotta like this guy has a lot of obviously has a lot of power, has a lot of money, charisma, has the goodwill of the people behind him. So it's
Absolutely.
intimidating figure
He
to
could
go
have,
against.
yeah, he could have had, he did have anything that he want. And at one time was one of the richest black men in America, richest black men in the world. I mean, Jay Z had a line, "I want money like Cosby," everybody looked up to him in one way or another. So why did this happen? Like, why did he
Ego.
do this? It was definitely ego. If you, it's one thing that throughout the documentary they don't put in perspective. But this was in 1960s, like, same time that I tell you that we had a breakthrough black character. We have allegedly a black man drugging and raping a white woman. I mean, this would set off alarms, and he would be thrown in jail if it were anybody else in any situation. So I don't know. It's very these stories. It's very easy to dismiss if you hear them one by one. Excuse me, if you hear them one at a time. But
But
once
when
you
you
hear them,
look at the body of work,
yeah, and you
jeez.
hear their independent stories and how similar they are, it is very compelling and very, very
And
saddening.
it's creepy. It's just
Yeah.
creepy. It's very, very creepy. I do want to say this about the documentary itself. Great,
Hmm.
it's a great thing to watch if you guys
Well
have
done,
some
Kamal.
time. A lot of good stuff in there. I learned a lot of stuff that you know. The first episode makes you feel good about him, right?
Yes,
Because he's charming and shows you his rise, becoming from being a bartender at a comedy club to hey,
absolutely.
just take a shot, try it, and from there skyrocketing to be this iconic figure
Yep.
to reaching the peak and then just a steep
And he also
dive.
one of the other things was he started black stunt doubles. Like there were no black stunt doubles until him,
Yeah,
and he insisted that black stunt doubles be employed, and they were, and that's how the organization started. There weren't any before him, so he was a champ of the
revolutionary in a
people. Yeah,
way.
he was
Yeah.
revolutionary, he was champ of the people, but he had issues, and it started off with the Spanish Fly. H, you remember him talking about the Spanish Fly?
I do not. I had no. To be honest, just I never knew what a Spanish fly was, and now, after watching the documentary, it's just
Yeah.
creepy. Like if I ever
Oof.
hear somebody use that word
Oh my
Spanish fly, I'm
God.
gonna be like, oh,
I
that's
think I've heard it once or twice in passing and had no idea what that was. I thought it was just a saying. I didn't know that it was actually uh, um, it was actually a drug, and
he talked about it all the
and
time.
yeah, and they actually from the doctor he says that is an irritant that causes a burning sensation in the urethra, which once eliminated by urine, it sort of feels like an aphrodisiac. So what the way that he described it on Larry King was accurate. You give him according to the doctor. I have no idea if that's true. Let's not make any confusions here. But according to the doctor, you give him a little drop. And according to Bill Cosby, you give him a little drop, and then they get open apparently. And so he was doing this back then. He said, "For every boy knows about this is what roughly quoting said. Every boy knows about this from age 11 till death. They know about Spanish fly and they'll use the Spanish fly." And
What
he
kind of
jokes about it in
what
his
kind of
comedy.
kids are these? Why the kids need to know about
Dude,
Spanish
I'm
fly?
not one of those kids. I had no idea.
I had no idea what that
Yeah,
was.
seriously. And that's crazy that he would do it. But he moved on to Quaaludes, which he said in one of his depositions, which ultimately is how what convicted him.
Hmm.
But they overturned it because they gave him the right of the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, yeah, he
So
had immunity essentially.
exactly. So these he was allegedly drugging people and allegedly
I mean, he said it. I mean,
yeah,
it was
he said
alleged.
it. Yeah, I still don't want any problems with Cosby because according to some of the other people, this guy is formidable and he still has money. But he was doing this way back then and he enjoyed it. Like if you have all that fortune, all that fame, why would you need to have an unconscious woman? I
You know,
don't get it.
because you look at it. This guy was a mega star, superstar.
Absolutely.
Although he was branded as America's dad, I'm pretty sure he could walk in the street and a lot of women would be very impressed by him, and he would not have to need to do what he did.
Yeah.
This has to be some kind of ego, some kind of fetish, something that was deep inside of him.
I think it was definitely ego and I
The
think it started in
the
the
power
60s.
of like I guess having somebody unconscious, but I don't
Yeah.
get like that's not even
I
that's
think
weird. That's just weird
it's
and creepy.
weird and it's like it totally goes against what most guys are looking for. And I think it was ego because of a few points. One of them being the one that I said, a black guy raping a white woman back in his 60s allegedly, and also the way that he handles himself, the way that he bullies people constantly, time after
Yeah.
time, and he talks down to everybody. And it started with well, it didn't start with, but some of the people are like Wanda Sykes, who he said we speak English to, and Hannibal Buress when he went after him, and Eddie Murphy called up Eddie Murphy and said you can't curse at people and blah blah blah. And who knows whether he did the same thing to Richard Pryor? He probably did, and he bullied the reporter. You saw in the interview that he just flat out. The reporter asked him about the allegations at that time, and he said, no, he said, we don't talk about that. And then he went over the reporter's head in the interview and said, hey, you're going to cut that out, right? And the first he went to the interviewer and said, you're going to
Yeah,
cut
he
that
was
out. And
just
then he didn't say anything. He's like, hey, you're going to cut that out, right? And he said, I don't know. It's like, well, you talk to your people and make sure that it gets done. I mean, this guy so comfortably just tells them what to do on their own show. Like it's insane.
it's insane because he's just used to that power, that ego. You know, one thing I learned about in this documentary that I didn't
Yeah.
know that Hannibal Buress was the one who exposed him,
Yeah. I
and
remember the
unintentionally,
video
was just trying
going
to make a bit
viral.
a
Yeah.
joke. And he just you want to Google Cosby and
Yeah. Bill Cosby rape gets more reviews or more kickback than his own name or whatever,
yeah.
which is crazy. And also getting back to the earlier topic, him talking down, he's talking down to his own black people, the same people that he built up. And this is the reason why we have a connection to him right now and why it was so difficult for people to see him as he is because he had a successful gig every decade. So it was I Spy in the '60s. It was Fat Albert in the '70s, and it was
The
the
Cosby Show.
Cosbys in the '80s.
I mean
So he
the Huxtable, what is it?
it was a Cosby Show, and they were the Huxtables, and so he had a successful gig and he was constantly connecting with that generation for each decade. And even still, he grew so much goodwill from those past 3 decades that he rolled into 90s without a problem. He was beyond reproach, which is why he was able to say those crazy things that he said to Larry King in the 90s during that interview where he talked, and he put it in a book too. Like I read the page on the video. I didn't buy the book, but I read the page on the in the book, and it was just that's just wild. Pause the screen when that page comes up where he's talking about Spanish Fly, and see what he's saying. It's just wild.
It is crazy just to watch the how he discussed that so openly, how he made all these weird comments that made people feel awkward.
Very much so.
And it's sad, sad to see how the other people that this affected, people that he's disappointed.
This guy,
This stuff, it
yeah, this
sucks.
guy was. It seemed like at times his predatory self would come out. Like I went back and I watched the video with Sofia Vergara. Is that how you pronounce her name? Sofia Vergara.
Bulgaria.
Yeah, and when they were on, I forget what show they were on. It was a late night show, and Cosby was the host. And this was like around the time that she came out with Chasing Poppy, so she was just climbing the ladder, and it started off fine, and then it just got creepy.
Got
After
derailed.
it
Yep.
got real creepy, and she was having that nervous giggle, and it was cringe. It was absolute cringe, and I think it revealed a certain part of him. But to see, moving on to the women's accounts, what did you think about these women's accounts, H?
It's heartbreaking. I mean, he in a way he is approaching these women to trying to impress them, romance them, offer them some kind of fame and glory. And let's face it, you're young, and somebody of this stature comes saying, "Hey, come hang out with me. There might be a part for you.
Yeah,
You can hang out with a superstar." I don't know too many people that would turn that down because just the curiosity of what lies behind the curtain,
yeah,
behind that life, is incredible. Especially back then, I'm pretty sure since information wasn't as available as it is now in regards
exactly.
to how celebrities
And he took
behave and
advantage of
are,
that.
and he took advantage of that. I mean, it is sad. I mean,
What about the Cosby Show and all the alleged victims from the Cosby Show and how they said that there were enablers on the Cosby Show? What are your thoughts on that?
they all knew. And without a doubt, all these other actors say it, that everybody knew this was around, and they I mean, he wasn't very quiet about what he was doing. He's having people there act without probably maybe without having the proper credentials to be on the show, knowing that he's having people have lunch with him and then they're in the show. Come on, you put doing two together, you know something's going down. So they knew what was happening. That's why everybody was scattered around when they were discussing certain things in the show. So everyone there enabled this man to be able to do this, and this is because fame and money. People did not want to lose their spot. They did not want to because why would you risk your job?
That's a bigger
And that's the
story.
bigger conversation right there.
Yeah.
Because I'm pretty sure, although we already had the Me Too movement and whatnot, this stuff is still probably happening. It's just these people are getting better at how they do things.
It's interesting that you say that because to this day, and it's just an observation. I'm not saying anything about them, but sometimes, hey, what you do says something as well. There was only two people from the Cosby Show, two actors from the Cosby Show, that constant actors that spoke on this documentary. Like you had some actresses that were the victims and whatnot, but the people that were on the show that weren't victims, you only had two speak on what was going on and what the issue is. So that says something that the other ones maybe didn't want to speak, or maybe it was difficult for them to separate what they experienced from what they're hearing now, or maybe they just didn't want to be bothered with it, but because it was so close to home.
Well,
But
they know that if they were to show up on a documentary like this, they're too close, and fingers may be pointing at them,
yeah,
and you don't want to have that kind of publicity and kind of spotlight on you. I mean, that's just the reality of the situation. Because whether you knew or not,
yeah,
people are gonna assume you knew something was happening in that set, and you didn't say or do nothing. You went had a great career, great life, and now you wanna now that the man's down, because it's easy to attack Cosby now because he's down, but it's hard. It was harder to attack him when he was at the
it
top.
was really hard. I mean, even the Professor Hill from Temple, he had an honest perspective on what Cosby was saying about the black community, and he wrote an article about it. And Cosby tried to have him fired from Temple, he straight shut him down. And when that was unsuccessful, Cosby confronted him and just basically talked down to him. And which was the funny part because that's the other part is, and we were talking about Eagle, and Cosby has, I forget what type of doctorate, but allegedly it's like a baby doctorate, and then Professor Hill had an actual PhD. I forget what type of doctorate
Lemon
Cosby
Hill, yeah.
has, yeah. And Cosby was talking down to him because it ain't about that. If you have if you don't have a PhD, what'd you get the doctorate for, Cosby? Like, what he didn't go to. They say that he didn't write his thesis, and I probably believe that. But what'd you get the doctorate for if you got the easy one, right? Just so people could call you doctor, so you
The
feel
paper
better,
is the
it's
thing
the
that
ego.
matter.
It's the ego. So it's all good. Let us know your thoughts on this documentary if you saw it. We can go as deep as you want. Like, one, do you think? Oh, and that's the other thing. He was at the Playboy Mansion too.
Oh,
Hold on,
he
yeah.
was a
We'll
Playboy
talk
Mansion
about
all
that
the
in a
time.
second. Like, do you think Cosby did it? How do you feel about all these allegations that are coming out? Let us know your thoughts in the bottom. But yes, Cosby was
Spending a lot of
constantly.
time. Well, he was being hired by Hugh Hefner to do shows
Yeah.
at the Playboy
But
Mansion.
he
And look
was
his
there
face like,
even when he wasn't performing. He was there constantly. And also he was there in Reno all the time, which who does they say nobody that big does shows in Reno. Like, what was that about? And obviously one victim came out of Reno, there probably are a few more. It's all very weird, and to see how high we held him and to see all the devious things that he was doing and how pious he was. It's just an utter mind screw, and it's difficult to reconcile. And honestly, it puts people in a different perspective that even people that you hold in high regard can do terrible things. And
never meet your
yeah,
heroes because they'll disappoint you.
exactly. So it's all good. Let us know your thoughts. Uh, we'll be on the next documentary. Maybe not for Cosby, but for something else. Let us know your thoughts. Until the next time, I'm E. This is H, and we are
Unstructured.